You know that incredibly specific, deeply uncomfortable moment when someone asks you for a favor, and before your brain can process what they are asking, your mouth has already said yes. You hear the word "leave your lips," and instantly a heavy, sinking feeling drops into your stomach. You didn't want to say yes. You are already exhausted. But the agreement slipped out anyway, like an automated reflex. Or maybe your version happens differently. Maybe someone speaks to you sharply, catching you off guard with a sudden criticism. Instead of defending your boundaries, you just stop. Your mind goes hollow. You turn into stone. You nod and smile nervously. And it isn't until 3 hours later, alone in your room, that you finally think of exactly what you should have said. If you have spent your life being the relentlessly nice one, you know this cycle intimately. We frame it as being reliable, but beneath the surface, there is a quieter, much heavier reality. This is the nice guy trap, or the chronic people pleaser's dilemma. It is the exhausting habit of trading your own boundaries for the comfort of everyone else. But when your habit of being agreeable forces you to swallow your own voice entirely, we are no longer just talking about manners, we are talking about survival. I remember when I was caught entirely in this web. A friend was moving across town, and they called me late on a Friday because someone else had bailed. I was completely drained from a brutal week, but the second they asked, I disguised my exhaustion and said I would be right there. I spent that entire night carrying heavy boxes, pushing past my physical limits until 2 in the morning. I drove home with an aching back, telling myself, this is just what good people do. But the next morning, I saw a story they posted. They were out at a sunny brunch spot with other friends, laughing, looking completely rested. Meanwhile, I was lying in bed, completely drained of the energy I desperately needed. I didn't feel like a good friend in that moment. I felt entirely used. I felt a quiet, bitter resentment burning in my chest. But the hardest part to admit was that I couldn't even be mad at them. I had agreed to it. I abandoned myself before they even had the chance to. This is what the nice guy trap looks like in practice. It is a quiet, self-inflicted exhaustion. We convince ourselves that being relentlessly helpful makes us immune to rejection. We secretly believe that if we just give enough and sacrifice enough, people will finally see our inherent worth. Psychology shows us a very different picture. Chronic people-pleasing is rarely about genuine generosity. At its core, it is an anxiety response. It is driven by a deep fear that if you are not useful, you are not lovable. You learn that having your own needs makes you a burden, and saying no creates a friction that you cannot tolerate. To a nervous system wired for appeasement, interpersonal conflict feels exactly like abandonment. This is why you say yes when your body screams no. You aren't giving them your weekend out of the goodness of your heart. You are paying an emotional toll to keep the relationship safe. You are buying security with your own burnout. But what happens when that fragile safety is threatened? A few weeks after that moving night, I gently tried to tell that same friend that I was feeling deeply burnt out. Instead of offering understanding, they immediately got defensive. They raised their voice, questioning why I was being so sensitive, pushing back with a sudden, sharp edge. In that precise second, something inside me just snapped off. I didn't get angry. I didn't calmly explain my side. I just froze. My throat tightened until I could barely swallow. My mind went completely hollow. I stood there like a statue. I nodded slowly. I mumbled a quiet apology that I didn't mean, just to make the unbearable tension stop. I went home, stood in the shower staring at the wall, and felt the crushing weight of humiliation. Suddenly, the imaginary argument started playing in my head on a loop. I had the perfect, sharp responses, but in the actual moment of conflict, I had been physically incapable of accessing a single one of those words. If you have ever felt intense shame for not defending yourself when it mattered most, You need to understand exactly what is happening in your brain. You did not fail. You did not act weak. When someone raises their voice, your autonomic nervous system takes over completely. You know about fight or flight, but there are two other primal survival responses: freeze and fawn. When your brain registers an emotional threat that it feels it cannot outrun or overpower, it hits the emergency brakes. You freeze to avoid detection. And when freezing isn't enough, you fawn. Fawning is when you actively try to soothe the source of the threat by agreeing with them and becoming entirely compliant. You mirror their desires so they will calm down. Your brain decides that the safest way out of danger is to erase your own identity and become exactly what the angry person needs you to be. Think about being in a meeting at work when a manager unfairly criticizes a project you poured your soul into. Instead of calmly explaining your process, your mind goes blank, your face flushes hot, and you stare at your notebook, nodding in agreement. Or think about a romantic partner asking a loaded, slightly aggressive question. Instead of asking them to change their tone, your stomach ties into a knot, and you immediately start apologizing frantically. In those moments, you are not choosing to be silent. Your prefrontal cortex, the logical, language-producing part of your brain, has temporarily gone offline. It is deeply painful to realize that our self-proclaimed kindness is often just masked anxiety, and our silence is a desperate survival mechanism. But there is absolutely no shame in how your body has tried to protect you. If freezing and fawning are your default settings, it means that at some early point in your life, appeasing others was the safest option you had available. It kept the peace in a chaotic environment. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it was trained to do to keep you alive. But you are not in that past environment anymore. The heavy armor that used to protect you is now the very thing keeping you trapped. How do we stop being the endless people pleaser who burns out in the dark? And how do we thaw the freeze response when conflict arises? It begins by fundamentally changing your relationship with the word no. For someone caught in this trap, saying no feels like an act of violence. We think it requires a long, defensive explanation or a groveling apology. But a true boundary is never an apology. It is simply a statement of reality. You can say no without being aggressive and without leaving room for negotiation. The most effective way to start is by using a short, declarative sentence paired with an alternative. The brevity stops you from sounding guilty, and the alternative shows you care without sacrificing your peace. If someone asks for a massive favor when you are already running on empty, you don't need a 5-minute monologue about how busy your week is. You just say, "I don't have the capacity to help with that today, but I can send you a link to a great service that does." Or, if a friend wants to vent for 3 hours, you say, "I can't hold space for this conversation right now, but I would love to catch up over coffee this weekend." It feels terrifying the first time you do it. Your mind will tell you they hate you now, but notice what happens next. The world does not end. But what about the moments when you are put directly on the spot? When the confrontation is sudden and you feel that familiar paralysis creeping in, your mind going completely blank. You cannot force your brain to instantly generate a calm, rational argument when your nervous system has plunged into freeze mode. So, you stop trying. Instead, you memorize a rescue script. A rescue script is a pre-planned set of words designed to buy you time and get you out of the immediate physical space so your nervous system can regulate. When someone confronts you sharply, you use 3 simple sentences. Sentence 1 acknowledges the situation. Sentence 2 states your current capacity. Sentence 3 sets the timeline. It sounds exactly like this. "I hear what you are saying right now. I need some time to process this before I respond. Let's pick this conversation back up tomorrow." That is all you say. You do not explain why you need time. You do not argue. If they keep pushing, you become a broken record and repeat the exact same script. And then you step away. You physically leave the room. You take slow, deep breaths. You give your body time to realize you are not in mortal danger, allowing your prefrontal cortex to slowly come back online. You are not running away from the conflict. You are actively choosing to engage with the difficulty only when you are in full possession of your own mind, rather than letting your fear dictate your words. I remember the first time I used that rescue script, and the first time I genuinely said no without offering a frantic apology. My hands were shaking. I was convinced I had just ruined the relationship forever. But later that evening, instead of the heavy, resentful exhaustion I was so used to, I felt something entirely different. I felt a quiet, profound sense of self-respect taking root in my chest. I felt like I was finally inhabiting my own life, rather than managing everyone else's experience of me. You do not have to earn your space in this world by being endlessly accommodating. Your worth is not measured by how much discomfort you can silently endure for others. It is okay if conflict scares you. It is okay if your first instinct is to freeze. But you are allowed to unfreeze. You are allowed to take a step back, catch your breath, and fiercely protect your own energy. You have spent so much of your life being the safest place for everyone else to land. It is time you finally start becoming a safe place for yourself.